Hello, everybody. Welcome. I see Diana Two's in here. I don't see any others yet. We'll give it a minute or two before we start. So I just left David Lynn, Pepper Principles, live. It seems like he's doing a live every night at 7 p.m. But I sure do seem to be seeing those a lot. I was supposed to be at my St. Vincent de Paul meeting this evening, and I was concerned. They've moved it all the way over to the other side of town, and they've extended it. So it used to be just 2 blocks from here, and so I could leave at 7:30 and get back here and get everything done. They've moved it all the way to the other side of town. It takes half hour to get there, and then they wanted to run it until 7:45 this evening. So I planned on leaving early. I got there and I went to the chapel where we're supposed to have our meeting, and the door was locked. So, but that's because I was using the back door because I wanted handicap parking. So I just kind of decided, well, I'll just come on home and get my notes picked up and started and get this ready. And so here I am. But welcome. Let me see who else. Holly Ivans, welcome. Matthew Malloy, welcome. And Butch Graves, welcome. Also, let me see, we got Iowa, Colorado, golly. So anyhow, let me kind of walk you through one of my pet peeves. Hi, Little Lone Prepper, welcome. Thank you for joining. No, you're just coming over from where I just was. But let me share with you all one of my pet peeves, and that is all too often when we're discussing prepping, we don't discuss certain things. We leave things to people's assumption, and it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. But basically, when you don't know a whole bunch about a subject, you think you know everything. And when you know more about a subject, you think you don't know enough. So that's the Dunning-Kruger effect. I'm going to talk more in detail about this tomorrow night when we start our nonfiction book club, when we're going to do the introduction and chapter 1 of this book tomorrow night. But I kind of want to touch on it just a little bit here this evening. I put out a 1-minute video on how to do PPE for a nuclear fallout. And I've received a couple comments. And so one was I commented on another person's video, and I said she wanted to know how you decontaminate a $100 Kydex suit. And I said, you don't. It's disposable. And she says, no, not at that price. It's not disposable. And so people don't understand the difference between all you need is a poncho for radioactive fallout, and you need a Kydex suit at $100, $200, even $500. And there's even multi-$1,000 suits, depending upon the agent that you're reacting to. So this whole area, we call it CBRN, which stands for chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear. We used to just call it NBC, nuclear, biological, chemical. And they've separated out the radiological now so that if something like Chernobyl or Fukushima or something like that were to have its problems, that would just be radiological rather than nuclear in the sense of a nuclear explosion. So they kind of separated that out. But in all intents and purposes, radiological and nuclear are going to be kind of contained and controlled the same way. So one thing you have to do is people used to get in trouble all the time, argue about silver and when is silver going to have value in a post-apocalyptic world, and people say it won't have, it will have value, it won't have value. It's all depending upon the timeline. You may have in your mind a certain point after SHTF, and I may have a different point in time, and we may have things of different values. If you read Selko Begovich's books, like, for example, he talks about the value of a candle. Man, candles were super, super important the first 6 months after SHTF, because they were adjusting their eyes from having electricity and light at night. They needed the candles for that transition. Then when they ran out of candles, everybody got night vision and they didn't need candles anymore. So they didn't have the same value. So for the first 6 months after SHTF, candles had a very high value. After 7th month and on, candles had little value, not the same value they did for the first 6 months. So everything has a different value at different points in the timeline after SHTF occurs. Well, the same thing. When we start talking about protection from CBRN, we have to talk about 3 different things. Okay, so you have to talk about radiological protection, biological protection, and chemical protection. So if you think of chemical as being something like it could just be CS, which is tear gas. Okay. Then you're going to have one type of mask for that. That's all you need is the mask, because you don't want it getting into your eye ducts, your nasal cavity, or into your mouth. You don't want to breathe that stuff in. As long as you've got your face covered and you're not breathing it in, you're pretty good. A lot of people in the past have just used wet towels, and that's effectively taking care of the chemical aspect. Now, biological. Now, an exception to that is fentanyl. Fentanyl, God, you got to get to a level C or level D suit because fentanyl is so toxic. That chemical, if it touches your skin, can kill you. Then you've got the biological agents. Okay, so usually when you talk about a Kydex suit, then what you're talking about is protection against biological agents, and that can be a bad bug that, if it just touches your skin, can contaminate you and kill you. So typically, we're talking about things like the G series of chemicals, and the V series, VX, VN. Those are going to be your chemical agents, and all you have to do is keep it from getting into your eyes, ears, nose, mouth. You're good to go. However, if you get the biological agents, like the recent lockdown and things like that, those affect you differently. So you want to have 100% containment with a biological suit. That's even going to have self-contained breathing apparatus, or SCBA. So you're going to have a tank of air on the inside. You're not going to be filtering anything, because sometimes the filters aren't small enough to take care of the biological agents. So you can't decontaminate that. Okay. Whereas with nuclear, all you want to do is, you don't want that nuclear fallout in your lungs. So an N95 mask is sufficient. Goggles are sufficient to keep it out of your eyes. If you have a hoodie, to keep it out of your hair, because and poncho, basically, just keep the ashes off of you. It's not going to protect you against radioactive radiation. Okay. Very little is going to protect you against radiation. You got to have a lot of density, a lot of mass between the radioactive thing and you, in order to protect you from radioactive fallout. I'm sorry, against radiation. Whereas the fallout's what contains the radiation. So you just want to keep that off your skin. So poncho does great there, as far as just keeping it off your skin. Then you can rinse it right off, get rid of that poncho, go inside, and you're good to go. So there's different levels of decontamination, different levels of protection for each agent. And so, quite often we can have disagreements, and it's probably because we're talking different types of agents, or you don't understand the difference in the levels of protection that you need for each type of agent. So enough on that. We'll cover that tomorrow night. How many people do we have? Oh, we're up to 19. Wow. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started then. Who else has joined us? Anybody else in chat? Clarity Jane 31. Hello and welcome. Okay, so we're going to continue on. There's 30 questions left in this bank of 100. We're going to cover 15 tonight, which will take us up through a portion of the 20th century. And then we'll finish it up next week with the last 15 questions on the 100 question exam. Then we're going to start working on just basically the outline in the American Government book, which was written by Larry Sabato. And there are probably a lot of you who have watched Newsmax or some of the other radio stations where Larry Sabato is a guest speaker talking about the constitutionality of different things, and a really well-known speaker on constitutionality. So looking forward to getting into that. So question number one, what territory did the United States buy from France in 1803? What territory did the United States buy from France in 1803? And this was probably one of our greatest expansions as we broke out from the original colonies. Not Stonewall Jackson. Fantastic, Sue Me, and welcome. We have Canada here tonight as well. So welcome, Sue Me. That's correct. We purchased Louisiana. Now, the Louisiana purchase went up as far basically as Kansas, and even up into Nebraska, the portions of it into Nebraska. Number two, name one war that was fought by the United States in the 1800s. Listen to grandma. Great, correct answer. Good going. And Diana too got it right. And Cats and Prepping got it right. All right, you got a bunch of smart people here tonight. Name one war fought by the United States in the 1800s. Actually, there's a couple that they didn't name. So one that is not an acceptable answer. War of 1812 is fantastic. Great answer. The Civil War, or the war between the states, is a great answer. We also have the Mexican-American War that took place in the early 19th century. We had the Spanish-American War at the end of the 19th century. And then we also had the war. So we had in 1812, it was because the Brits were taking our sailors and impressing them basically slave labor on British warships. And we also had the War of Tripoli, the northern North African coastline in the early 1800s as well, where they were doing the same thing. The Moroccan princes and the shahs and all this kinds of stuff were taking our sailors and impressing them and putting them to work as slave rowers on their ships. So that's another one of those that was during that same time period. So the Mexican-American War, basically, we also had the Texas Independence War. We've got the War for Independence for California. We've got a whole bunch of other minor things, but yeah, we've got the major ones, I believe, named. Mm-hmm. So what was the war between the North and the South called? Hello, East Tennessee Preparedness. Welcome. Phioxerus. That is an accurate answer. I don't refer to it as a civil war because civil war kind of infers that one side wanted to take over the government, and that's not what happened. The South wanted to secede, break away from. They had no interest in controlling the North. They just wanted to be free of the North, form their own country, and live peacefully. And the North did not want that to happen, so they attacked the South. And so that's why, in my opinion, it is not a civil war. Because they weren't fighting for who was going to control anything. The North wanted to control the South, but that was after the South tried to break away. I would call it the War of Northern Aggression. I would also call it the war between the states. Either one of those is acceptable. The answer, for, of course, that the government's looking for is the Civil War. He does do some great ones. Name one problem that led to the Civil War. You're absolutely correct about that, Holly. They were not civil at all. So slavery. So let's talk a little bit about slavery because most of you aren't aware of it. Actually, as of about 1800, it was prohibited to import and sell new slaves anywhere in the U.S. So the slave markets pretty much went down as far as importation of new slaves. And so what that did was that caused a lot of people to force reproduction of existing slaves, where they would have, they would try to have baby factories, and then it was legal to sell and trade those, which was, I think, in my opinion, far worse than bringing in new slaves, because now you were creating families and separating them strictly for the purpose of being able to sell a slave that already existed in the U.S. So slavery, politics. When we talk about politics, Butch, I'm gonna kind of hedge on that just a little bit, and I'm going to say the difference between a federal system and a centralized government, because remember that as a federal republic, the way we were established, we had the 10th Amendment, which gave us states' rights. The Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution gave very limited authority to Congress on what they could do. More power was vested in the states than there was in the federal government. So that was the exercise. The states wanted to separate themselves because they felt that the federal government in D.C. was clamping down and saying, this is how you're going to operate, which we see a lot of today. And so those 13 Southern states said, no. We agreed on you would have limited power, and you're exercising a lot more power than what we agreed to. We're pulling away from that. We don't want to be a part of this where we have a stronger, more centralized Washington, D.C. with greater powers than what we gave them under Article 1, Section 8. And so that was another reason. So slavery, states' rights, and then, of course, economics was a great one as well. The North was pretty much industrialized, and the South was very agricultural and very labor-intensive agriculture. So when we talk about secession, little known prepper, let's talk about how that happened. So what happened was when the 13 states seceded from the Union, there were federal U.S. federal forts all along the coast protecting, because remember, we'd had the War of 1812, not too much previous to that. We also had the pirates who were active along, especially North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and then down into the Bahamas. But we had all those pirates that were very active as well. So we had a lot of federal forts and naval ports that were along the coast. So there was one federal port, and the people of South Carolina said, "Hey guys, we have seceded from the country. You are in this fort, but that fort is in our state. We want you to leave." And so they notified D.C. that the South Carolinians had asked them to depart. And the North's reaction to that was they sent an armada of ships down to defend the fort, and that's the Battle of Fort Sumter. And so that's basically how the World War II clash actively started. Was that the Federals, the North, refused to vacate Fort Sumter in South Carolina. Cotton gins, yes. Okay. Let me see. So here's the book answer that they want you to have: slavery, economics reasons, and states' rights. So those are the reasons that if you answer any one of those three, they're going to give you an A+ on your test, and you get to become a U.S. citizen. So what was one important thing that Abraham Lincoln did? Hello, Rebecca. Welcome. Gettysburg Address. Yep. He wrote that on the back of an envelope. 7 years ago, our fathers set forth upon this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. We are gathered today at a battleground commemorating those. I forget the rest of it. Anyhow, yeah, I had to memorize that in high school. But that's Gettysburg Address. But that was kind of a minor thing comparatively. The Star-Spangled Banner was actually Francis Scott Key, and he was out in Baltimore Harbor during the Battle of 1812. They had a whole bunch of American citizens who had been captured and were on prison ships out in Baltimore Harbor, and the entire British Armada came to try to take out Fort McHenry. Which was there. It's a star-shaped battle fortress in Baltimore Harbor. And so that whole story is Francis Scott Key was actually on a British ship watching the bombing, the mortaring, the cannon fusillage of the entire British Navy taking on Fort McHenry. And so the Star-Spangled Banner is basically his poem dedicated to watching that bombardment over a course of about 18 hours. So yes, absolutely. My prepper journey, that's right, number one. So his Emancipation Proclamation. Now, in all reality, that was actually an illegal document until we had the constitutional amendments That was just an executive order, basically. So, and his executive order didn't have full force and enforcement until we passed the amendments that did that. So one thing he did was to just like me, to hide his face, he grew a beard. Yeah. The Emancipation Proclamation. There we go. Yeah, he is the one who waged war against the South, and a lot of people call it reunified the country. That's what one of the answers that the USCIS is looking for. So he ended slavery, reunified the country, and let me see what the other answer is. They give three. So the Emancipation Proclamation, he saved or preserved the Union, kept it reunited, and led the United States during the Civil War. So those are the three answers that they're looking for. So we already talked about this one. What did the Emancipation Proclamation do? So that was his executive order basically freeing the slaves. Okay. What was Susan B. Anthony famous for, besides being a silver dollar? Thank you, Cats and Prepping. Thank you, Shenanigans. Very kind to both of you. Okay. Listen to Grandma says the flag. Who was the flag? Who designed and sewed the flag? Does anybody remember that name? So Susan B. Anthony is best known for women's suffrage, one of the original civil rights leaders, wanting equality between males and females, especially, yes, Rebecca, absolutely, especially women's voting, called women's suffrage. And so, yeah, we've got Phylloxera has it, suffrage movement, the women's suffrage. So the flag, Robin in Virginia got it right. That was Betsy Ross. So did Rebecca, so did Listen to Grandma, Sue Me, Holly Ivins. Yeah, so it's Betsy Ross did the flag, and Susan B. Anthony did basically women's suffrage. That's okay. We gave you full credit. I mean, spelling doesn't count. My fingers aren't that accurate anymore either. And I hate it on my cell phone because every time I hit space, I hit a B. So every once in a while, you'll see a nonsense B or C, B or a V in my text messages on my cell phone. That's not intentional. It's just my big fat thumb and the space bar, and that's just the way it is. So, if I'm allowed to make those mistakes, then I can't hold other people responsible for making the same mistakes that I make. Let me see here. Okay. Name one war that was fought by the U.S. in the 20th century. Oh, wow. How interesting, Molly or Holly. Wow. So what was Molly Pitcher famous for, if anybody can remember that? Hello, Pete. Welcome. Okay, so World War I is definitely a great answer for one of the wars of the 20th century. Molly Pitcher was famous because during those times, the weapons, of course, when you have gunpowder down at one end and the ball stuck in afterwards, light the fuse, it burns, right? It explodes. So you have extremely high heat. And as a result of that extremely high heat, if you don't rest your weapon in between firing, or if you're going to do sustained firing, you have to let it cool down a little bit in between. It'll crack, and then it's no longer any good. So one of the things that they would do is they would take pitchers of buckets of water, basically, and douse the cannons. You will always see in the old muzzle loaders that they have a sponge, basically, that they dip in water, and then they take that sponge and run it down the barrel before they put the new powder charge in it. That was because they didn't want to have any residual sparks or embers left in the barrel when you put the new powder in, or it would explode while you were loading it. and you didn't want that to happen. So they would always swab it down with water and then pull that out, basically mop it to kill any of the embers before they put the new powder in. Molly Pitcher was famous at the Battle of Monmouth. The cannons were beginning to show distress from the heat of being fired so much that she formed basically her own little bucket brigade to cool down the weapons so that they wouldn't crack and the Americans could win the battle. World War I, World War II, fantastic, great answers. So there's actually several. One of them is not on here either, and it's the only time the United States has ever been invaded on land. Okay. Now, I'm going to say the United States, that's the continental United States, because yes, we did have incursions. Japanese took over 2 islands in the Aleutian Island chain in World War II. They attacked Hawaii, but both of those were not states at that time. Okay. They didn't become states until later on in the 60s. But right after the change of the century, we had Pancho Villa came across the border and raided the town of Columbus, New Mexico. And Blackjack Pershing and this cavalry captain by the name of Patton, George Patton, were down at Fort Bliss. And so they dispatched the first modern tanks ever to chase after a cavalry, a horseback led group from Pancho Villa. And they also brought in the Buffalo soldiers from Fort Huachuca, who were actually cavalry, horse-mounted cavalry. But anyhow, so wars that we were involved in during the 20th century. You've got the Spanish-American War kind of went over a little bit more. We had the Boxer Rebellion, where we had U.S. forces in China, where we were defending the embassy and things like that. That was another minor war. We had World War I, World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam War. We had the Persian Gulf War. We also had Afghanistan, which was, I guess Afghanistan, we really didn't say we got involved in that until 2001. But yeah, we had the Desert Storm, the Persian Gulf War. And we also got a little bit involved with NATO as far as the Balkans War in the early 90s. So Boston Tea Party, that's a very interesting one. So the Boston Tea Party was actually in 1774, if I'm not mistaken, 1774, 1775, before the Declaration of Independence. And that was the Sons of Liberty who did that, or at least they took credit for it afterwards. And that was because of the tax, the tea tax and the Tax Stamp Act. And so then later on after that, you had the Boston Massacre and a couple things like that. So, yep. All right. Who was our president during World War I? This is a question on the citizenship test. Who was president during World War I? Amen. Way to go, Cats and Prepping. Woodrow Wilson. He also helped formulate the League of Nations, which was an attempt to have something like the United Nations right after World War I that was going to help us try to avert any future wars. Oh, gosh, Pat, I'm sorry you're having such bad luck, but it's great to have you. Thank you for being here. Yeah, and a lot of people blame the Great Depression on some of his shenanigans as well. So, yeah, but it was Woodrow Wilson. Okay. Who was president during the Great Depression and World War II? Who was president during the Great Depression and World War II? He's also responsible for the 25th Amendment. I believe it's the 25th Amendment. Let me find my Constitution here. Let me put my eyes on. Eisenhower came in 1950. FDR, great. Now, we actually had two presidents during World War II. And the reason that FDR is the correct answer here is because the Great Depression and World War II. Now, if it had just said World War II, who was president during World War II, we actually had two of them. Who was the other one who was a president during World War II? And he's the one actually who made the decision to drop the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Yeah, the New Deal, Robin, you're absolutely correct. That was the Great Depression. That was FDR. So after Franklin Delano Roosevelt passed away, his vice president was Harry S. Truman. And Harry S. Truman is the one who made the decision to drop the bombs on Nagasaki, Hiroshima, and then he was president, of course, when World War II ended. Now, so Eisenhower does come into a question. I think it's in the very next question. Let's take a look here. No, it's two more questions down. Let me see if I can get to it here. Oh, it's more than that. It's a couple, but we'll come back to Mr. Eisenhower, General Eisenhower, here in just a minute. So Little on Purpose says, I don't believe that. What is it that you don't? I did not know that FDR had a monument in D.C., Phioxerus. So you got me on that one. Does he have a monument in D.C.? Yes, the CCC were fantastic. That was so. For example, the Tennessee Valley Authority and the Lower Colorado River Authority, two of our largest hydroelectric systems in the U.S., were built with CCC labor. The CCC labor also did a lot of dams and aqueducts and things like that in California. Remember that the Rural Electrification Act was passed in 1933. So a lot of the CCC people basically ran the high power lines from electric production stations out into the rural communities as well. So yeah, we probably would not have recovered from the Depression had it not been for the CCC. So that's something that gosh, if you have any of his relics or anything from when he served, like notes or books or anything like that, that would be interesting to put into a book. Mm-hmm. So let me get that question back up again. So who did the United States fight in World War II? And while we're doing that, I want to go look up this FDR monument. I did not know one existed. FDR monument, Washington, D.C. So I'm learning something new here myself. Way to go, Phioxerus. Thank you for letting me know about that. So it's not going to show me though, but I need to go to images. Oh, you are right. That's not a very attractive monument at all. No, that's not attractive. Thank you for pointing that out. I was unaware of that. So thank you, Phioxerus. You taught me tonight. So thank you. Who did we fight during World War II? There you go. Rebecca got him right. Butch Graves got it right. Cats and Prepping got it right. Robin got it right. Clarity Jane got it right. All right, fantastic. So here's the interesting thing. We never declared war on Germany. Germany declared war on us. And but likewise, Japan never really declared war on us. We declared war on them. So, but of course, that was after the attack on Pearl Harbor. And but it was very shortly after Pearl Harbor that Adolf decided to declare war against the U.S. And then there's the famous what is it called? the telegram, the Ribbentrop, von Ribbentrop telegram between Germany and Mexico, where the Nazis were trying to establish a relationship with the Mexicans so that they can invade the U.S. from the Mexican border. Hello, Michelle Mitten Pepper, veteran. Welcome. I got rid of your envelope, but I saved your address, so I can reciprocate the fantastic presents that you sent. Thank you so much. All right, Robin of VA has her dad's pictures, paraphernalia, and more from World War II. That's great. Yep. So it was right at the same time. So the CCC was established right at the same time that the REA was established, and so that's why they were able to go out and build the dams. And I'm not, if I'm not mistaken, I could be, but I think the CCC was also responsible for the labor for the Hoover Dam on Lake Mead. So, but we'll have to check that. I think I'm correct, but I'm not going to put any money on it. Okay. So, and actually, the very first state park that Texas had was Possum Kingdom, and that was a civilian conservation corps park as well. Then, if you go up to the Highland Lakes, right outside of, I'm going to say Bartlett, but it's not Bartlett. It's right there by Horseshoe Bay. They have an overlook area, and that was all CCC barracks and everything else. So when I was working for the state, that actually now belongs to the state, and that's where we'd go for our planning retreats and everything. The executives would go there for our planning retreats. Wow. That would be a phenomenal as well. Blue Ridge Parkway was built by the CCC. Absolutely. They did a lot of great things, and just unbelievable. Okay. So here's that question I told you that we'd see Eisenhower come up again. Before he was president, Eisenhower was a general. What war was he in? Then I'll share a trivia question with you that I wholeheartedly agree. They did phenomenal work. Woodwork and stonework was just unbelievable. Extremely high quality craftsmanship. Wow. That would be interesting to see. So Pat's dad was CCC as well. Went to so okay. Rebecca's got this one right. Eisenhower was WW2. So one of the promotion questions that you get asked in the Army, so you've got to name all of the 5 stars that there ever were. So of course we attribute 5-star to General Washington, but they didn't have 5 stars back then. So most of the 5 stars came about as a result of World War II. So you had General Eisenhower, who was the supreme Allied commander for the European campaign. Then you had George Marshall, who was the Army Chief of Staff. You had Douglas MacArthur, Nimitz. Nimitz was an admiral. And then there's one more admiral. I forget the other admiral. How can I do that? But anyhow, and then the guy who started the Air Force. But anyhow, a long time ago. But we haven't had that many 5-star generals, and so almost all of them were during World War II, with the exception of George Washington, who was honorifically made a 5-star. See if somebody's got the rest of them here for me. It's been so long. No, Byrd wasn't one. Who was AEF, Michelle? AEF was primarily during World War One. So yes, Douglas MacArthur got his first Medal of Honor from World War One. Then he got the second Medal of Honor from World War Two. So okay, we got two more questions. What movement tried to end racial discrimination? And I'm going to say they actually did it to the greatest extent possible. Well, the Army Expeditionary Forces were actually what they were called, the forces we sent over World War One. Let me look up. I could be wrong, but I think the AEF was primarily what we sent over World War One. Army Expeditionary Forces. So the AEF was established on July 5th, 1917 in France under the command of then Major General John J. Pershing. So yeah, so AEF was World War One. Okay. Rosa Parks, MLK. So basically, it was just you might want to call it the civil rights movement. That's the answer they're looking for on the test. But you guys are one question ahead of the government. So let's go ahead and get to that question because you've got some fantastic answers already. Let me get to I have to use my mouse because that little thing. So what did Martin Luther King Jr. do? Omar Bradley. Thank you, Diana. Yes, that was another 5-star. You know, and here's something strange. When Omar Bradley retired, he retired to an old soldiers' home in El Paso, right outside of Fort Bliss. When I got my Eagle Scout, I was pinned my Eagle Scout at halftime of a UTEP Miners home game. Right there in the college, in the Coliseum, the Sun Bowl. And General Bradley was still alive, and he pinned my Eagle Scout on me. So he did it from a wheelchair, but he pinned my Eagle Scout on me. So I was, I got to actually have a 5-star touch me, but I didn't get to touch him. So that was something else. Yes, so that's a great answer, Rebecca. That's exactly what the government is looking for you to answer, and that is that. Martin Luther King Jr. was basically the head of the civil rights movement to eradicate racial discrimination in the United States. And he was probably one of the best known of the civil rights leaders. So many others, Rosa Parks, of course. And then you've got, the two who now take a lot of the credit from Martin, senior moment. I just said his name. Martin Luther King. There we go. But Al Sharpton and a couple others, were there with him. Try to take the credit for what he did. I had the utmost respect for Martin Luther King because he really tried to accomplish things in a sense that it was non-antagonistic. It was a very difficult topic that he was taking on. It was an extremely critical topic that he did. And okay. I will take you at that, but I looked up AEF, Army Expeditionary Force, and it said World War One. So I'll take you at that. I definitely won't argue that. So if you just looked it up, that's fantastic. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's unlike a lot of people who now want and who advocate like BLM, where they advocate equality through violence. Martin Luther King did it in a very peaceful and religious way, and I had the utmost respect for him. And it was just phenomenal. So Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree with you. I wish he had been around a little bit longer. I think the two key characters, and another person who was instrumental in that, that doesn't get enough attention, was his son Franklin has taken over his ministry. Billy, what was his name? But he was a an evangelist, and oh man, did he preach on equality? Uh, yes, the Air Force was called the Billy Graham. Thank you, Apocalypse Chow. Thank you. Yes, and so it was called the Army Air Corps during World War II, and then it became a separate entity, and the first commander was General Doolittle. I'm not sure. I think it might have been around 1952-ish when the Air Force was formed. I'm not 100% sure, but it was after World War II, and I think it was right at the beginning or during the uh, Korean War. Let's take a look at that. U.S. Air Force. It'll give us a little bit of information on that. So let me see. The U.S. Air Force formed 1947. So I'm a little bit late, but 1947, right at the end of World War II. So they were a separate entity by the time we got to Korea. Let me see. What else do we have here? I love you, Fiexorus. I love you. You are absolutely correct. Pretty much anybody who's going to do something good has been removed, and we can take a look at that with the two Kennedy brothers. I mean, they were fighting, quote, the establishment, even though they were part of the establishment. And I think Bobby was more anti-establishment than John was. But Bobby, of course, got taken out by Sirhan in 1968, right after the LA Democratic convention or whatever it was. It was a big rally, fundraiser, whatever. But yeah, and of course now we've got his son who is running for president. So that's going to be quite interesting how that pans out as well. That's basically the 15 questions for tonight. Does anybody have anything else that they would like to discuss a little bit more detail, or anything about the history of the U.S. or the history we've got going on so far that we've discussed so far this evening? Yeah, there was a lot of consternation against their dad, who was basically got all of his money from smuggling booze during the Prohibition. Yeah, bootlegging. Let me see here. I'm looking up something here real quick just to check.
He had known mafia connections too.
Yeah, there were. Helen just added in that there were known mob connections between the father, Joseph Kennedy, and the mob, and so yeah, there's been a lot of that stuff. A lot of shaky stuff has gone on. I am 100% for the 20. I think I said 25th earlier. I think it's the 22nd Amendment is where the FDR amendment that no president can serve more than 2 terms. If somebody would, I had it here just a minute ago. Let me see here. I think it said 22nd. I said 25th. Let me look it up. I could be wrong. I'm not always right. Amendment 22. No person shall be elected to the office of president more than twice. Yeah, so 22nd Amendment, basically the FDR Amendment, no president can serve more than 2 terms. I would like to see term limits on any elected official as far as the House of Representatives and the Senate. I would like to see that. I don't like, career politicians. We've got people like Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer and McConnell and all these other old guys who have never had to work a life, don't know what it's like to have to make a living, don't know what it's like to have to worry about pay your income tax and things like that, who are making decisions for us and about us and have never worked a day in their life other than in politics. And so I think that the original idea, and even Davy Crockett said that, Davy Crockett served 1 2-year term in Congress, and then as soon as his term was up, he left. He said it was a den of snakes, and that he was going, as far as he was concerned, they could go to HELL. He was going to Texas, and so of course he came to Texas and was involved in the Alamo in 1836. So May of 1836, as a matter of fact, I think it's May 14th. Let's look up. That's an interesting one. The Battle of the Alamo. I think it's May 14th, 1836, 1826. 1836. Yay! Every once in a while, I just pull something out of the ether, and let's see when we are. What days? The siege of the act. Oh, May 6th, March 6th was the final day. I had the first 2 letters right. Okay. Michelle, have a great evening. Thank you for looking that up about Eisenhower. Appreciate that. So that's kind of where we are. Okay, so one more reminder about tomorrow night. I don't know. I really don't know. I know that Travis and Bowie were, but I don't know about Davy Crockett. I know Franklin Roosevelt was, George Washington was, Thomas Jefferson was, Alexander Hamilton was. A lot. Dwight Eisenhower was. So, yep. Great comment there, Sumi. Absolutely. So we've got 2 carrier groups in the 6th Fleet, basically Eastern Mediterranean. They've reactivated the 5th Fleet, which is basically Diego Garcia. The headquarters for 5th Fleet is Qatar in the Red Sea, Gulf of Aden area. Persian Gulf, Gulf of Aden, Arabian Sea. So that whole area is basically under the auspices of 5th Fleet. I believe they have an aircraft carrier group in the 5th Fleet as well. So you've got one right there, basically in between Iraq and Iran, and then you've got 2 now off the coast of Israel. So we've got 3 carrier task force groups in the area there of where the conflagration is occurring. And I just forwarded today a fantastic video that was done by Ben Shapiro that goes from the history all the way back from Abraham to present on the Palestinian Israeli conflict from 900 BC until current. And wow, what a thorough history, just unbelievable. I would not argue with you on that. Right now, it is a lifetime appointment, and but the last one we had who was really, really old. That although I did not agree with her politically, she had some decisions, and the way she based her decisions was based on sound logic on her part, and that was Ruth Bader Ginsburg. but I didn't agree with any of her decisions. But she was mentally sharp up until the very last minute. So I have to say, she's one of those cases that says, there is a reason to have people that long. But then again, you're absolutely right. We could have people in positions for a long period of time that probably should not be there. We probably should have I believe it's the 25th Amendment, where we can remove the president for cause. We should have that for basically any elected official, that if something should happen to them while they're in service. Let me see. Yeah. 25th Amendment is in case of the removal of the president from office of his death or resignation. So it also provides for mental incompetence. So yeah, we probably need that for a lot of things, to include district judges and stuff like that. There are some crazy judges out there who have gone senile on the bench, and we probably would behoove us to retire them, have them think of that. Well, actually, there is a provision in the 25th Amendment that allows us to remove a president for mental incompetence. But there is no provision for anybody else. I would support extending the 25th to any elected or appointed official. So. Okay. So tomorrow night, please don't forget, we're going to be starting the introduction and chapter 1 of this book, Nuclear War Survival Skills. This is the 2022 edition. It has all kinds of updates, just phenomenal, great reading on some of the updates. Remember that when we start talking about things like PPE, personal protective equipment, and we're talking about protecting ourselves from CBRN, chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear, we're talking about 3 different things. Okay, so we need to make sure we're talking, we let people know what we're talking about. Are we talking about nuclear and radiological? Are we talking about biological? Or are we talking about chemical? Because each one has its own requirements as to the level of protective equipment we need to have to protect ourselves from it. Each one has a different scope as far as decontamination. So there's a lot of different things that are different based upon which one of those 3 we're talking about. We're going to be focusing for the next 7 or 8 weeks on nuclear warfare, and we're going to be using this book as our guide starting tomorrow night. So I'll have it in the show notes that you can pick up a copy. Now, if you pick up a copy, I'll warn you, I get 2% of whatever you spend. I think the book is $20, so I'm going to make 40 cents if you buy the book. So want to be upfront with that's the way it goes. Now, of that 40 cents, 30 cents of it's going to go to charity, either to the Caring Place or to St. Vincent de Paul. And I usually try to do 33% to each. So. Okay, so with that, let's go into the book of Numbers. Have you all noticed the new little thing I also have from Timothy that in my description? Fantastic little verse I found in Timothy. But anyhow, the book of Numbers, chapter 6, verses 24, 25, 26. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you kindly and grant you peace. So let me see if I can find that Timothy thing for you here real quick, because I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So I've added it to my descriptions, YouTube. Let's get in here. YouTube. My fingers were faster than my brain, and it didn't spell it right. So come on, computer. I know I've got too many tabs open, and you're going to be slow. My channel. And then we're going to go to manage videos. And then default uploads when it shows up. Okay, upload defaults. So this is, I'm sorry, it's 2 Thessalonians. So it says, in fact, when we were with you, we instructed you that if no one was willing to work, neither should that one eat. So if you don't work, you don't eat. And that's kind of how it's going to end up being in our post-apocalyptic world. So please remember, we're all in this together so we can come out the other side together. Please be kind, polite, and respectful to each other, because togetherness is the key. What a great group of people. Thank you so much for being here this evening. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe if you're new. And please feel free to send me an email if there's something you want to discuss, you want me to bring up. If you would like to be brought on live with me for a discussion, please send me an email on that too. And that's coldwarprepper@outlook.com. Y'all take care. Have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.